Hello everyone, I'm Greenwolf, and today we're at Grimspound. Originally misidentified as a Saxon or even Neolithic ruin, Grimspound actually belongs to the latter half of the Bronze Age. Placed before the summit of a hill overlooking a panoramic view of Dartmoor, Grimspound dates to have been built at some time around 1300 BC. The settlement, consisting of 24 hut circles surrounded by a large wall measuring to an impressive 4.5 meters wide in places, is positioned facing towards the north, which would have been ideal for grazing livestock. Even by this point in the Bronze Age, Dartmoor had begun to change from the fertile woodland it had been. During the Neolithic, large areas of the woodlands that once covered Britain had begun to be cleared to make way for farmland. Dartmoor was not spared from this deforestation, and due to the makeup of the fragile moorland soil, the area became all but unfarmable. Though by the late Bronze Age the moorland would have been useless for crop farming, the large areas of open grassland would have been ideal for grazing herds of sheep or cattle. Dartmoor's prehistoric story doesn't start in the Bronze Age, however. The landscape is dotted with even more ancient sites. The latter part of the Neolithic saw the raising of many ceremonial sites by those early farming communities. Many of these are still standing in our time, with examples of stone circles, standing stones and stone rows found throughout the national park. The culture of monument building didn't simply end at the climax of the late Stone Age. Rather, many of these sites seem to have continued to be used, or even perhaps built by the early Bronze Age people of Dartmoor. While the use and building of these monuments seem to have continued into the early Bronze Age, many other aspects of life for those communities would have seen huge shifts, both societally and technologically. Sacred spaces such as stone circles seem to have played a part in the funerary practices of early Bronze Age communities. Burial mounds made of stone are often seen attached or imposed onto these monuments. These mounds would have been the final resting places for prominent individuals. This trend continued into the Middle Bronze Age, and while construction of stone circles and the like appears to have ceased by this point, the presence of funeral cairns in their proximity shows that these sites were still revered. Grimspound is one such village. The great wall that surrounds the settlement was unlikely to have been a defensive decision. Rather, the wall, which rarely exceeds 1.5 meters in height, was intended to keep the village's herds in and the wild animals out. Wild animals such as wolves would have been a common threat to the livelihoods of Bronze Age farmers. Wild auroch would have also been a worry to Bronze Age herders. Domesticated cattle would have been more docile and used as beasts of burden. The auroch, however, remained wild in nature, and the much larger and aggressive beast could cause huge problems for these communities if allowed to mate with its domesticated cousins. To enter the village, one would have to approach from uphill and pass through the paved almost 2-meter wide entranceway, which is flanked by 2 tall sections of wall. Once inside, the village would have been clear to see, the houses short and built slightly into the ground. The low walls of these ancient abodes survive and can be seen by visitors today. It's quite probable that the walls of these homes were not much taller than they are today, and rather the space inside the home was provided by taller conical roofs made of wood, thatch, or turf. The low nature of the homes may have helped reduce their exposure to the winds that often sweep the wide open areas of Dartmoor and keep the warmth provided by their central hearths in the internal space. The placement of the walled village is no accident. As mentioned earlier, the area around Grimspound lends itself well to the grazing of herds. This, coupled with the fresh water stream which runs through the north side of the village, would have made the space quite comfortable for the villagers. Around the edge of the site, smaller enclosures were built to house the animals that were so valuable to these Bronze Age farmers' way of life. Despite what the formidable appearance of Grimspound may suggest, the village wasn't as isolated as it may seem. Within half a kilometre of the complex, another contemporary village was built, just behind the fold of a hill nearby, though this village of 9 houses had no wall. Rather, these houses seem to have belonged to a set of farmers tending to fields within low rubble walls. Though the date of 800 BC has been given as the end of Grimspound's prehistoric occupation, life in the area had begun to change a few hundred years before that. It's likely that by 1000 BC, Grimspound had been all but abandoned. It was around this point in Dartmoor's history that the damage done by the woodland clearances to the fragile moorland soil had become too difficult a hurdle for farming communities to endure. The population began to shrink, likely due to these communities moving further north or south to more suitable territory. Human life on Dartmoor begins to become lessened from this point on, and for the rest of the Bronze Age, it seems the occupation of the moorland is scattered. This changed once again with the advent of the Iron Age. From 750 BC, while evidence of villages remains elusive, hill forts began to be erected by the warrior tribes of the Iron Age. But that tale is for another time. I hope you found this video interesting. Grimspound has been a site I had wished to visit for a long while, and I'm grateful that I've finally been able to do so. If you want to see more content like this, please check out my links in the description below. As always, thank you for watching.